If hard work guaranteed success, most people wouldn't be struggling. So why are the hardest workers usually the poorest? Because effort isn't how this system actually works. The promise that shaped a generation. You were taught something very simple growing up. Work hard, stay disciplined, be patient, and eventually you'll make it. For most of your life, you believed that. You stayed late at the office while your colleagues left at 5. You skipped vacations, postponed dreams, and gave your best years to work that promised a better future. Yet somehow, the finish line keeps moving. The promotion goes to someone else. The raise doesn't match inflation. The security you were promised evaporates with a single email about restructuring. So the question isn't why am I not winning? The real question is, what game am I actually playing? Because the system rewards something very different from effort. And until you understand what it actually measures, you'll keep pouring energy into a scoring system that was never designed to let you win. Let me show you exactly how this works. Here's the uncomfortable truth that most people discover too late. The system doesn't measure how hard you work. It measures where you work in the chain of value creation. Consider two people, both working in the restaurant industry. Maria works as a server at a busy downtown restaurant. She arrives at 10 in the morning to prep, works through the lunch and dinner rushes, and often doesn't leave until 11 at night. She's on her feet for 13 hours, managing difficult customers, memorizing complex orders, and coordinating with kitchen staff under intense pressure. On a good week, she might take home $800 after taxes. Then there's David. He owns 3 franchise locations of a mid-tier restaurant chain. He visits each location maybe twice a week, reviews numbers his managers send him, and makes decisions about staffing and inventory. He works perhaps 15 hours a week on the business. His annual income from these 3 locations is around $400,000. Same industry. Same hours Maria works in a single shift versus David's entire week. Vastly different outcomes. Why? Because effort without leverage doesn't scale. Maria's income is directly tied to her time. She can work harder, be more efficient, provide better service, but she cannot work more than 24 hours in a day. She cannot clone herself. She cannot be in 2 places at once. Her maximum earning potential is capped by the physical limits of time and energy. No matter how exceptional her effort, the structure has a ceiling. David's income isn't tied to his time. It's tied to systems that work whether he's present or not. He's not trading hours for dollars. He's extracting value from a position in the economic chain where his assets generate returns independent of his direct labor. This isn't a moral judgment. It's a structural observation. The person working harder isn't necessarily earning less because they're less valuable as a human being. They're earning less because they're positioned in a part of the system where compensation is tied to time rather than leverage. Hard work makes the system function. Leverage makes people win. And the system needs both, but it rewards them very differently. The geography of wealth. The highest earners in any economy are rarely the hardest workers. Look at the Forbes 400 list from 2024. The wealthiest individuals are owners, not operators. They're people who control assets, platforms, intellectual property, or access to markets. Jeff Bezos doesn't work harder than the warehouse employee packing boxes in the Phoenix fulfillment center during the holiday rush. Bezos owns the platform. He owns the infrastructure. He owns the position in the value chain where every transaction generates a margin that flows upward. The warehouse worker might pack 200 boxes an hour with extraordinary efficiency. That effort is real, measurable, and essential to the system. But it's priced at $15 an hour because labor is abundant and the position holds no leverage. The worker can be replaced. The owner cannot, or at least not without massive disruption. Consider the music industry. In 1980, a successful musician made money primarily through album sales and concerts. They had to perform, record, tour, and maintain that effort continuously. Today, someone like Taylor Swift earns money not just from performing, but from ownership of her master recordings, merchandise licensing, streaming rights that generate passive income, and strategic partnerships where her brand itself is the asset. The shift isn't about working harder. It's about controlling more of the value chain. Swift fought publicly to own her masters specifically because she understood this principle. Ownership of the asset matters more than the labor that created it. The system rewards ownership over labor, strategy over sweat, and placement over persistence. This is why someone can work less and earn more, because they're positioned upstream in the flow of value. They're closer to the point where decisions are made, where margins are highest, where returns compound. Meanwhile, the hardest workers are downstream, absorbing the pressure so the system stays stable. Their effort isn't wasted. It's just mispriced. It's compensated at the rate of labor, not leverage. And that distinction makes all the difference. The productivity paradox. Here's the part that feels almost cruel once you see it clearly. Productivity wasn't designed to free you. It was designed to make output predictable and labor replaceable. In 1950, if you were a skilled typist in a corporate office, you had genuine job security. Your speed and accuracy were rare, valuable skills. Companies invested in training you. They kept you employed because replacing you was costly and disruptive. By 1990, word processing software had standardized that skill. Anyone could learn it in a few weeks. The bar for entry dropped. The value of that particular skill plummeted. By 2020, voice-to-text and AI writing assistants were making even basic writing tasks automatable. This pattern repeats across industries. The more efficient you become at a standardized task, the easier you are to replace, the easier you are to measure, and the easier you are to control. When Amazon implemented advanced tracking systems in their fulfillment centers, they could measure exactly how many items a worker picked per hour, how long bathroom breaks lasted, and whether someone was meeting productivity targets. That data didn't primarily serve the worker. It served the system's need for optimization and control. The worker who became 20% more efficient didn't get 20% more pay. They got reassigned to handle more volume or trained to help newer workers reach the same efficiency. Their reward for productivity was more responsibility, not more freedom or compensation. General Motors discovered this during their automation push in the 1980s. They invested billions in robots to replace human workers on assembly lines, expecting massive cost savings. What they found was that robots were incredibly efficient at repetitive tasks, but human workers had been absorbing all the variability, solving small problems on the fly, and adapting to changes. When humans were removed, the system became brittle. Small disruptions cascaded into major shutdowns. But here's what GM really learned. The value wasn't in how hard workers worked. It was in how adaptable they were. And once that adaptability could be standardized or programmed, those workers became replaceable too. The system doesn't reward loyalty. It rewards optimization. Working harder often leads to more responsibility without corresponding increases in autonomy or compensation. You didn't fail. You just followed the rules too well. You optimized yourself right into a position where your value became commoditized. The real purpose of busy. There's a reason the modern work culture celebrates being busy. Open any LinkedIn feed, and you'll see people humble bragging about their 4 a.m. starts, their weekend work sessions, their commitment to the grind. But here's what that culture actually does. It keeps you busy enough to never step back and ask fundamental questions. Questions like, is this the right game? Am I building equity or just earning wages? Does working harder in this position actually change my trajectory? Or does it just make me a more efficient component in someone else's wealth-building system? Those questions are dangerous to the system because they lead to uncomfortable realizations. The system doesn't want you exhausted as an end goal. It wants you dependent. Dependent on a paycheck that arrives every 2 weeks. Dependent on a schedule that structures your life. Dependent on approval from managers and performance reviews. Dependent on stability even when that stability costs you autonomy. In 2023, a Gallup survey found that 62% of American workers live paycheck to paycheck, including 48% of those earning over $100,000 annually. These aren't people failing to work hard enough. These are people trapped in a consumption and obligation cycle that keeps them tethered to their current position regardless of effort. When you're dependent, you can't take risks. You can't walk away from bad situations. You can't negotiate from strength. You accept terms that favor the system because the alternative feels like falling off a cliff. That's not an accident. It's a feature. A workforce that can't afford to quit is a workforce that accepts the terms offered. And the terms are rarely designed around what's fair. They're designed around what's necessary to keep you participating. But some people do escape. Not all of them, and not easily, but some do. And when you study how they did it, a pattern emerges that has nothing to do with working harder. Look at Sarah Blakely, who founded Spanx. She wasn't working harder than other salespeople when she came up with the idea. She was working differently. She identified a problem, created a solution, and most importantly, she maintained ownership. When she sold a majority stake in Spanx in 2021, the company was valued at $1.2 billion. Her wealth came from ownership, not from the hours she put in. Or consider the story of Chris Gilbo, who built a business teaching people how to start small businesses with minimal capital. His book, The $100 Startup, documented dozens of people who escaped traditional employment not by working harder at their jobs, but by redirecting their effort toward building assets they owned. A teacher who started a tutoring platform, a programmer who built a niche software tool, a writer who created a paid newsletter. What these people share isn't superhuman work ethic. It's a shift in how they thought about value creation. They moved from selling time to building leverage, from labor to assets, from asking, how can I do this better, to how can I build something that works without me? The tech industry is full of these examples, but they exist everywhere. The contractor who stops taking hourly jobs and starts bidding fixed-price projects based on value delivered. The therapist who creates an online course that reaches thousands instead of seeing clients 1 hour at a time. The manufacturer who licenses their process instead of just executing it. In 2019, Kevin Hart made $60 million. He didn't perform $60 million worth of comedy shows. He owned production companies, had equity in partnerships, licensed his brand, and structured deals where his value compounded. He worked hard to get to that position, certainly, but the wealth came from leverage, not from grinding. Even in traditional corporate structures, the people who advance fastest aren't always the hardest workers. They're the ones who understand positioning. A 2022 study from Stanford's Graduate School of Business found that professionals who change companies every 3 to 5 years earned significantly more over their careers than those who stayed loyal to one organization, even when controlling for performance metrics. Why? Because external moves are one of the few ways to reset your position in the compensation structure. Internal raises are typically capped at 3 to 5%. External moves can command 20 to 40% increases because you're re-entering the system at a different point. The people who break out don't usually work harder. They change the rules, change their position, or change the model entirely. Not overnight, not easily, but intentionally. And that intentionality, that awareness of what game they're actually playing, that's the difference. If you've been working hard and still feel stuck, if you've done everything right and the results don't match the effort, if you're exhausted and frustrated and wondering what you're missing, understand this. It's not because you're lazy. It's not because you're behind. It's not because you failed. It's because effort alone was never the winning condition. The game rewards position, leverage, and ownership. It rewards understanding the system well enough to operate differently within it. This doesn't mean effort doesn't matter. It means effort needs to be directed toward building leverage, not just executing tasks. It means asking what you're building that could work without your direct, continuous input. It means considering whether you're trading time for money or building assets that appreciate. For some people, that means starting a business. For others, it means investing in skills that are harder to commoditize. For others still, it means negotiating better, moving strategically, or restructuring how they work within existing systems. The specifics depend on your situation, your skills, your risk tolerance, and your resources. But the principle remains. Once you see the system clearly, you stop blaming yourself for playing by rules that were never designed to let you win. You stop measuring your worth by how hard you can work and start asking what you're building that could change your position in the value chain. You start asking better questions. What do I own versus what do I operate? Where is my effort creating value that I capture versus value that someone else captures? What would I need to change to move from trading time to building leverage? Those questions don't have easy answers. Making changes based on those answers is even harder. But the alternative is staying in a system that will gladly accept your effort while keeping you dependent, replaceable, and capped. The choice you didn't know you had. The system works because most people never realize they're in it. They think the game is about effort, so they work harder. They think the problem is them, so they optimize themselves. They think success is just around the corner, so they stay on the path. But once you see it, you can't unsee it. You notice who owns what. You notice where value flows. You notice the difference between being essential to the operation and capturing the value that operation creates. And that awareness, uncomfortable as it is the first step toward operating differently. The game doesn't change by itself. You change how you play it. You stop measuring yourself against effort metrics that were designed to keep you running in place. You start building toward leverage, ownership, and position. This isn't about shortcuts or get-rich-quick schemes. It's about understanding what the system actually rewards and directing your effort accordingly. It's about recognizing that working hard at the wrong thing is worse than not working at all because it gives you the illusion of progress while keeping you trapped. Hard work still matters, but it needs to be hard work building something you own, developing leverage you control, or positioning yourself where the returns on effort compound rather than cap. The people who win in this system aren't necessarily smarter or more talented. They're just playing a different game than the one most people were taught to play. So take an honest look at what you're building. Ask whether your effort is creating leverage or just efficiency. Consider whether you're positioned to capture the value you create or whether it flows upward to someone else's bottom line. Those questions won't be comfortable. The answers might require changes you're not ready to make. But they're the right questions. And asking them is how you stop being a component in someone else's system and start building one that works for you. The system isn't going to tell you this. It benefits from you not knowing. But now you do. And that changes everything.